When most folks from away picture Maine, they conjure the postcard version. The rocky shores where the tide gnaws at granite, the lobster boats rocking in their moorings, the endless forests where moose drift like mist between the pines. That's the Maine they sell on t-shirts and travel brochures. But there's another Maine, a darker one. There are places up here that don't make the glossy magazines or the Instagram reels. Places the locals mention only with a shrug, or not at all. From the far northern timber, where the woods press in tight and daylight struggles to reach the ground, to the cold blue waters of Casco Bay, where fog rolls in like something alive. This state holds more than just scenery. It holds secrets. And if you're lucky, or unlucky depending on how you look at it, you might cross paths with some of the more mysterious and elusive pieces of our local flora and fauna. Creatures whispered about in logging camps. Shapes seen moving just beyond the lantern light. Things that don't fit neatly into field guides or ranger reports. Tonight, we're stepping off the marked trails and into the places where the map fades to blank paper as we discover 5 Maine cryptids you've probably never heard of. If you spend enough time in the deep timber of northern Maine, the real woods, the ones that swallow sound and have a way of making you feel like you're trespassing, you'll hear the old loggers talk about something that lives above the cut lines. Something wiry. Something mean. Something that doesn't take kindly to strangers walking under its roof. They call it the Agropelter. It's an old fearsome critter, older than the camps and older than the stories told around their stoves. The Agropelter makes its home in hollow pines, waiting in the dark of the trunk like a knot with teeth. And when it decides you've wandered too close, it doesn't growl, it doesn't warn, it doesn't chase. It throws. Dead limbs, broken branches, chunks of wood snapped off with those long whipcord-like arms. The kind of debris that gets written up as a tragic accident when a man is found, crushed beneath it. That's how the Agropelter earned its nickname, the Widowmaker. Not from falling trees, but from the things it sends flying with murderous intent. Most who cross paths with it don't get back up. But one man did. Big ol' Kittleson, a timber cruiser working the upper St. Croix. He's the only soul said to have survived an Agropelter's strike and lived long enough to describe what he saw. According to the story, he was walking a line on a still morning. No wind, no birds. Just that heavy hush the woods get when they're holding their breath. Then a rotten limb came screaming down from above out of nowhere and shattered across his skull, instead of killing him outright. Dazed, bleeding, and absolutely furious, Kittleson looked up. And what he saw clinging to the trunk wasn't any animal he knew. A gaunt, sinewy body, arms like braided leather, a face twisted into something almost human, but meaner, crueler. The kind of expression carved into an old carnival mask meant to scare children straight. Kittleson said the thing could snap off a branch and send it through the air like a shell from a 6-inch gun. And after that day, he refused to work near hollow trees. Wouldn't sleep under one, wouldn't even walk beneath a leaning pine without muttering a prayer. The old loggers say the Agropelter feeds on hoot owls and woodpeckers. It keeps its numbers low. But every now and then, someone finds the body under a dead limb on a windless day. The old-timers just shake their heads. Because accidents happen in the woods. But some accidents have aim. There are creatures in Maine's forests that make noise, that leave tracks, that give you at least a fighting chance. And then there's the one that doesn't. The old lumberjacks spoke of a thing that lived in the deepest, blackest parts of the timber. A creature so perfectly adapted to stalking humans that most men never even knew it was there until it was too late. They called it the hidebehind because that's exactly what it does. The hidebehind is described as a gaunt, unnatural figure, tall and thin as a dead birch. Its body stretched into something that shouldn't be able to move as fast as it does. Its limbs are long, its posture wrong, and its skin, if it has skin at all, seems to drink in the darkness around it. But its real talent is its speed. Lightning quick. Silent. Always just out of sight. Blink your eyes, and it slips behind the nearest tree. Turn again, and it's already behind another. No matter how fast you spin, you'll never catch it out in the open. The hidebehind lives in that blind spot just over your shoulder. That cold prickle on the back of your neck when the woods go quiet, and you suddenly realize you're not alone. Its preferred prey? Anyone foolish enough to wander the forest alone after dark. The lumberjack said it could stretch itself impossibly thin, flattening its body to vanish behind a sapling no wider than your wrist. They said it could follow a man for miles without making a sound, waiting for the perfect moment he stepped off the trail or paused to catch his breath. And when it finally struck, there was never even a scream. just an empty bedroll in the morning, and a name spoken quietly over breakfast. Some claimed the hidebehind fed on human flesh. Others said it drank fear like water. But all the stories agreed on one thing. You never see it coming. The moment you turn to look, it's already gone, melting into the next shadow, the next trunk, the next patch of darkness between the trees. And if you ever feel watched while walking the woods at night, that slow creeping sensation that something is matching your steps, staying just out of sight, the old loggers would tell you not to run. Running only makes you prey. A quiet night in the 1950s. The kind of night where the darkness feels thicker than it should. Like it's been poured over the world instead of simply fallen. A lone truck rattles along on one of those narrow, winding back roads. The kind that seem to twist just a little differently after sundown. The driver is a local man heading home late. Headlights cutting thin tunnels through the trees. No radio, no company, just the hum of the engine and the steady rhythm of tires on old pavement. Then the truck coughs, sputters, dies. The headlights flicker out, and the night rushes in. Thinking he's run out of gas, the man climbs out with a muttered curse, the gravel crunching under his boots. The woods around him are silent. Not necessarily peaceful, but expectant. Like something is waiting, holding its breath. He walks to the back of the truck, reaches for the gas cap, and that's when he feels it. A presence, watching. He turns, and there, standing just beyond the reach of the moonlight, is a figure that should not exist. The legs of a goat, bent and powerful, ending in cloven hooves that sink into the roadside mud. Above them, the torso of a man, broad-shouldered, and clad in a flannel shirt like any woodsman you would have passed in town. But the proportions are off, stretched, hunched, as if the body is trying to remember how to be human and failing miserably. Its face stays hidden in the shadows, but the man can feel its eyes on him. Heavy, intelligent, and seemingly curious. This is the Goatman of Cherryfield, a creature whispered about in Washington County long before the highways came through. Some say it's a cursed logger. Others say it's something older, something that crawled out of the deep woods and learned just enough about people to mimic one. The man stands frozen, breath caught in his throat, as the Goatman shifts its weight, hooves scraping softly against the gravel. It doesn't charge, it simply watches him with that awful, patient stillness, as if deciding whether he belongs on this road, or whether he's already been claimed by the night. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the creature steps backwards into the trees, swallowed by the darkness between the pines. When the man finally scrambles back into his truck, the engine roars to life on the first turn of the key. He never drove that road alone again. Casco Bay has its share of lighthouses, postcard sunsets, and calm summer tides. But beneath all that, there's a much older story moving through the water. A story that's been with Maine since before the Revolution. They call it Cassie, the Casco Bay sea serpent. The earliest written account dates back to 1779, when fishermen reported a monstrous shape rising and falling in the swells. Too long to be a whale, and too smooth to be anything they recognized. Since then, the descriptions have stayed eerily consistent. A long, snake-like body, armored with hard ridges, and a horse-shaped head that lifts from the waves like something surveying the shore. One of the most famous sightings came from Edward Preble, a man not known for tall tales. He claimed he saw a serpent nearly 100 feet long, undulating off Cape Elizabeth, its back rising in a series of dark humps, each one rolling forward like the spine of something impossibly large moving just beneath the surface. And the sightings didn't stop there. Throughout the 1800s and well into the 20th century, people along the coast, sailors, lighthouse keepers, families out for a Sunday ride, all reported the same thing. A creature gliding through Casco Bay with a slow, deliberate grace, as if it owned the water. The last reported encounter came in 1986, when a pair of boaters swore they saw a ridged back break the surface near Peaks Island before slipping silently into the deep. Since then, nothing. No confirmed sightings. No evidence. Just the fog, the tide, and the uneasy feeling that something might still be watching from below. Some say Cassie moved on to deeper waters. Others believe it's still out there, rising only when the bay is quiet and the fog hangs low enough to hide a creature older than the state itself. And on certain nights, when the water goes still and the gulls fall silent, folks along the coast swear they can hear something moving just offshore. A slow, rolling sound, like scales brushing against the underside of the sea. Maybe Cassie is gone. Or maybe she's just waiting for the right moment to surface again. Up in the far reaches of Maine's North Woods, where the lakes lie still and the spruce stand shoulder to shoulder, there's a legend that refuses to die. It began in 1891 with a man who knew the woods better than most, a hunting guide named Clarence Duffy of Old Town. Duffy was working near Lobster Lake when he saw something step out from between the trees. At first, he thought it was just a moose. A big one, sure, but nothing he hadn't seen before. Then, it kept getting taller. Duffy claimed the creature stood 12 to 15 feet high, towering over the brush like some pale monument. Its coat was a ghost white, not the dusty gray of an old bull, but a stark, unnatural color that seemed to glow against the dark timber. And its antlers, he said they were immense, sprawling out like the branches of a dead oak, each tine catching what little light filtered through the canopy. He froze, gun in hand, finger on the trigger, and he couldn't take the shot. Not because he missed his chance, but because the sight of the thing hollowed him out with fear. Duffy dropped his rifle and ran, stumbling through the undergrowth until he reached camp, pale and shaking. When he later told his story, the other guides laughed. They said he'd seen a trick of the light, or a bull in winter coat. Maybe he just had a little too much of whatever he kept in that flask of his. Duffy didn't find it funny. He stuck to his story until the day he died. And that was the beginning of the Specter Moose legend. Over the years, more sightings trickled in. Hunters, trappers, even entire parties claiming they'd seen a massive white moose moving silently through the trees, its antlers brushing the branches overhead. Some said it was a ghost. Others said it was a spirit of the forest, a guardian, or a warning. A few whispered that shooting it would bring a curse. But most agreed on one thing. If you ever see the Specter Moose, you don't forget it. Even now, in the deep north, where the roads run out and the nights get long, folks still talk about a pale shape drifting between the trees. Too tall, too quiet, and too old to be just another animal. Maybe Clarence Duffy saw a freak of nature. Maybe he saw something else entirely. Something the woods keep for themselves. Out here in Maine, the daylight has a way of making everything feel simple. The trails look familiar, the shoreline feels safe, and the world seems small enough to understand. But when night falls, when the fog drifts in from the water and the woods start to feel different, the edges of that certainty begin to fray. Because the creatures we've talked about tonight, they're not just stories. They're reminders. Reminders that the forest keeps its own counsel. That the ocean hides more than it will ever reveal. And that the dark places on the map are dark for a reason. Maybe you'll never meet an Agropelter waiting in the pines. Maybe you'll never feel the hidebehind matching your footsteps. Maybe you'll never see a pale giant drifting between the spruces, or a serpent rolling beneath the tide. But the truth is simpler and stranger. You don't have to see them for them to be real. You just have to listen. Listen to the crack of a branch when the wind is still. Listen to the hush that falls a little too suddenly. Listen to the water when it moves like something is passing underneath. Because Maine is full of stories. Old ones. The kind that don't need proof to matter. And if you stay out after dark long enough, you might just find yourself becoming part of one. This has been an Acadia After Dark production. Our title music was written and performed by local Maine folk punk legends Pine Tree Riot. Background score and sound effects are courtesy of Epidemic Sound. If you enjoyed the show, then do me a favor. Hit the like button, and if you're not already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, if you would like to support what we do, then the best way is by joining us on Patreon and becoming a lantern holder tonight. For less than a cup of coffee, you get early access to ad-free episodes, exclusive digital content, like Acadia After Dark postcards, and more. Visit us over at acadiaafterdark.com for more horror from the foggy coast of Maine. Keep those lanterns lit, and stay safe out there, hikers.